Hey guys, Entashed here, and I wanted to give you a quick summary of the Director's Cut Part 1 from Luke Smith. Now this is the Destiny dev team as well, but this is essentially Luke Smith writing all of this stuff, and it is based on their thoughts on how the last few seasons of the game have played out, what they want for the future, as well as some information on some other updates or director's cuts that they plan to make soon. I think that this is really good. I do recommend you reading it as well, but I'm going to try and pump through this very quickly and just give you a breakdown really quickly and give you kind of my thoughts on it. So they talk about the last 6 months, they talk about the seasons, and how the annual pass was actually really hard to make. They had to constantly be making content. They had to constantly make bets on, will this be good? Will it not be good? We don't really know. We hope it's good. And it did work out in a lot of situations, but the stress from making these seasons the way they did was very hard on the studio. But I think they did pretty good overall with the seasons, but they might need to rethink how they do it in the future. The powerful sources problem. So this is an interesting problem. There are so many ways to get powerful gear, and it feels like a chore list. I have done my powerful bounties so many times, it's annoying. I don't want to play Gambit for primes. I don't want to play, powerful drops from strikes sometimes. I don't want to play the Crucible. And the other thing, too, is, it's a tough situation, because if you don't give them powerful drops or some reason to do strikes, well, then no one will do them. So it is a very delicate balance they're trying to figure out, but as they continue to add these new difficult activities, they add things like Shattered Throne, they add things like, raids. If people want to power up and be the highest power possible, shouldn't they be doing that high-level content? And so that's a problem that they're trying to fix, and they're going to talk about that later. Now, they talk about Season the Drifter a whole bunch, and they talked about how it was too focused. They like Gambit. A lot of people like Gambit, but when you make a whole season about Gambit, the people that don't like Gambit hate it. And that's a tough spot to be in. But they also recognize that Gambit and Gambit Prime have problems, and they want to improve on the game, especially if they want long-term viability for the game, if they want the masses to enjoy it. They can't just make Gambit Prime and leave it. It needs to balance, just like the Crucible. It needs to balance, and be fixed, because there's some major glaring issues with the game, and they definitely want to improve on it. They also talked about Reckoning, and Reckoning, there's a lot to Reckoning. There was issue with the rewards, but the biggest thing was Reckoning broke a lot of their rules of engagement. They don't like to spawn enemies behind you. They like players to have all the information they need to win an engagement, and unfortunately, Reckoning, because you could constantly use your bow, constantly use your well, it ruined a lot of the PvE encounters and some of the stuff that they like to do. So they had to spawn snipers in the distance and pincer you between enemies and spawn really annoying stuff to maybe make you die. And they didn't like the feel of it. I find Reckoning kind of interesting because it's almost like Diablo, where you're just like slamming enemies and blowing them up. And it's interesting, but they don't feel like it was, really well designed engagements, and they like stuff that's more challenging and interesting and stuff you can interact with and think of different builds. So one of the things they referenced was like Shattered Throne. They talked about the dungeons, they talked about activities that are challenging but you could beat solo. And I found it really interesting because they said, we want to start adding challenge. Think of the Shattered Throne. Overcoming challenge feels incredible. And it does. It does. It feels fantastic to beat that really hard mission and get a really cool reward. And they need to start adding more of that to the end game. The campaign was really easy. Some of the raids are really easy. If you look at some of the raid bosses, you can stand in a well, smash it down in one phase, and they don't think that that's quality, design, and they want to start adding more challenge to the game. And some of that will have to do with balancing how powerful some of the weapons and buffs and stuff are, but they want to really double down on making good content, quality content, challenging content that you actually want to do for the rewards, but for the satisfaction of beating it as well. They talked about scout rifle buffs. They are coming they're going to get more into that later. They're going to make some ammo economy changes to stuff that kind of circumvents the system, such as Whisper of the Worm. They need to discuss how that's going to work. But they're also going to be changing how damage stacking, debuffs, and buffs work. Right now, you can tractor cannon, but if you tractor cannon and then shoot a bow, it cancels the tractor cannon. If you melting point, it can't, like, there's weird interactions with a lot of the buffs and debuffs, and they want to clear a lot of this up, which I think is fantastic. Big changes to pursuits. Let me show you this picture here. It's way down here. They're going to be making some changes to the pursuits tab, and they're very disappointed with the kind of the product they put out. They were trying to make a better system than what we had, but unfortunately there was a lot of backlash, and they know that they deserved it. They didn't, I mean, maybe not some of the crazy hate that they got, but they wanted to make a better system, and they don't think they did. They're working on separating the bounties from the quests, which I think is a great addition, and they want to optimize the Pursuits tab more. What they did is they changed it all up, they kind of messed with our muscle memory, it felt clunky to use, and they want to make this a great piece of menu or UI, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get there. I think that's a good thing, that's awesome to hear. They're also making some changes to Eververse. Eververse is tricky because it's microtransactions, and some people are salty about microtransactions, but it seems like they're making some steps to try and optimize things a little bit. One of the things they reference is if you have pieces of a Eververse gear set, and then you go buy the bundle, they want to reduce the cost to make it fair. If you have 3 out of 5 of the Optimacy set, then you can get 60% off buying the rest of it in the store, which I think is great. They need to reward you for already having pieces of gear, and I think that's going to go a long way. But they also, one of the things they said was they want to make, class-specific content, and if you're playing on a Titan a bunch, you can have access to that class-specific gear and see it easily and find it easily and make your way through the Eververse store easier. They're also going to add it to the director so you don't have to go to the tower every time because, you might be surprised, but some people love microtransactions and cosmetics and things like that. And, they might want to buy it on a whim. They see a cool character, they want to buy it. They're going to have, add access to this. Microtransactions don't upset me, because they're visual things that I can spend money on or I don't have to spend money on. And if you want to buy $20,000 in microtransactions, go for it. It doesn't impact me, and I don't think that the way that Bungie does it impacts the game negatively. There's, one thing that people say is like, well, all the cool cosmetics, you have to buy them. That's something they want to address. They kind of mentioned lower down how they want to overhaul the system with Armor 2.0 and the universal components, and they want to make sure that they're creating cool, awesome-looking armor for activities and have them kind of theme-based. If you're doing Trials of the Nine or Osiris, there would be Trials gear. If you look at the Raid gear, it would match the Raid. And so there are cool ways to get cool cosmetics, and you might have to work for them. Now they go back and they talk about the Menagerie. They talk about Reckoning as well, but they talked about the Chalice. They talked about the Menagerie and how accessible it was. You could jump in Menagerie and learn all the mechanics, and in a lot of ways it was an improvement over Escalation Protocol. Escalation Protocol was the start. There were some cool bosses, there's mechanics to learn, but they really optimized it and kind of mastered it with the Menagerie. Now, they also made very good improvements to how loot was distributed and how you could choose your loot, but the Chalice wasn't perfect. The Chalice, you still needed the ruins to unlock the gear you wanted, but it was still a very good step in the right direction, and they learned a lot from the Menagerie and the improvements in loot and in the encounters from it. But they also discussed Reckoning once again. There's some really good gear in the Reckoning. Some of the best weapons in the game are from Reckoning, but getting that gear is very frustrating. It's very convoluted and not a clear-cut path to get it. And they wish with the moat system and with Reckoning, they would have made a similar system to the Chalice. A way to get that gear, a way to farm it, a way to feel like you have a set path. And that's something that they're learning and they're improving on over time, and they hope to attack in the future. They hope to optimize these systems and make them very, very good going forward. And every time they do a new iteration of ways to get loot, they're learning from it and improving on it. So that's really good to know. There was one more kind of main thing. Okay, so it actually kind of referenced near the beginning how difficult it... Okay, so it's actually right here near the start, and it talked about how difficult it was making these seasons and how they created the Chalice, Reckoning, Black Armory, and these were whole new systems of progression, and they have a lot of work behind them. They want to try to standardize things, make things more systemic, and make them a little bit smoother so that going forward they can create new good content and not have to, worry about the rewards and how they're distributed quite as much. And this is something they want to really take head on going into the future, going into the Shadowkeep and things like that. And I'm excited to see what that is, but we kind of alluded to that in some of the previous stuff we talked about. Now, right down to the bottom, if you go all the way down to the bottom, they talked about a look ahead. They talked about the future kind of development posts that they're going to make. They're going to talk about supers and PvP very soon, hopefully. Armor stats, mods, and trade-offs, that's going to be coming very soon as well. Powerful sources, prime engrams in the world, damage numbers, damage stacking, and then apparently more. That's everything in a nutshell. That's broken down as fast as I could. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. And make sure that tomorrow you guys are keeping your eyes and ears open because they're going to be talking about armor, mods. They're going to be talking about the new system. And I'm going to be having a video here tomorrow. Turn on the bell notification if you want to see that the second it goes live. And that's it for me. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.